Hello. Today the Dartmouth Wanderers bring you an oral history of a great soldier. The Wanderers are a group of senior citizens sponsored by the Council on Aging. My name is Joe Barbero, and I feel proud to introduce the story of Lewis Red Millett, a 1940 graduate of Dartmouth High School. He served in 3 wars and was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor by President Harry S. Truman in 1951 for his outstanding actions in Korea. Various Dartmouth veterans and citizens will narrate his actions during the war and some of the various and many aspects of his very diverse life. Reuben Goldstein was a classmate, and he will introduce us to this outstanding man.
Greetings. I am Reuben Goldstein, and I was a classmate and friend of Lewis Red Millett. We corresponded often, and he visited my home here in Dartmouth at various times during his military career. On one of those occasions, I found out later, he had recently received the Congressional Medal of Honor. He had not even mentioned it during the visit. Among his many attributes, he was a humble person. He was born in Maine on December 15, 1920, and is a descendant of a long line of men who served his country. Starting in 1635, when Thomas Millett came to this country as an indentured servant, and his descendants, who fought and died in the Revolutionary and Civil Wars. His uncle Roland fought the Germans in World War I and then served in the Maine National Guard after the war. It is not surprising that Lewis followed in the footsteps of his forefathers and served his country as gallantly as he did. When Lewis's parents divorced, his mother remarried and the family settled in New Bedford. Lewis attended New Bedford High School for a short while until they moved to Reed Road in Dartmouth. The first day at Dartmouth High School, he wore a New Bedford High School crimson jersey. He very quickly learned that Dartmouth colors were green and white. Although the first day did not go so well, he soon became a popular member with his peers. In the 1940 class yearbook, he is remembered as the busiest senior, and his dominant trait was an unrestricted sense of freedom. The yearbook goes on to say he was unreasonable at times, but his outbursts soon tempered and his cooperative nature prevailed. His wide discriminating readings gave him invaluable common knowledge. He was vice president of a senior class, participated in sports, and was on the debating team, and was also editor of the Harpoon Yearbook. According to the yearbook, he was happiest when thinking and doing. He joined the National Guard while he was still in high school. For a Memorial Day speech, he put on his uniform and warned his classmates about Adolf Hitler and told them to expect the war soon. He said it is better to be prepared. If there was a picture next to a word warrior in a dictionary, it would summarize Lewis Red Millett. He was a patriot from a young age, a poet, a soldier, a war hero, a husband, a father, a public speaker, a man of action, a man who believed in justice.
My name is Major Steve Caravana. I'm a retired Army officer. I served in the Army Reserve for 32 years in a medical unit. I'm honored today to be able to read Colonel Millett's poetry. Colonel Millett was, as you will hear, a hero. He's from our own town of Dartmouth, and I am privileged to be here today to read some of his poetry. We are proud of the name Millett, although we are just ordinary folk. for we have shed our blood on 4 continents to be free of tyranny's yoke. I learned the stories of kith and kin while sitting by my mother's knee, of my great-grandfathers who fought in the Maine regiments to set the black slaves free. My ancestors were solid Union men who believed in the Stars and Stripes forever, so they volunteered to save the Union and went to war for that endeavor. Although none were rich or famous, you can plainly see, they served our country with honor to ensure that we live free. I joined the Army National Guard, a high school student, a recruit. We didn't have a lot of equipment or money, but they taught me to march and salute. I volunteered and became an air corpsman, but our president said we'd not fight. So I left and joined the Canadian Army to serve a cause I deemed right. For the Nazis had taken the world by storm. Thousands were in death head camps. The light of freedom was lost in that world, and we wanted to rekindle that lamp.
Hello. Today we're here to talk about a Dartmouth native, a man who graduated in 1940 from Dartmouth High School. And we brought 3 people who have all met him and had the honor of knowing him. And the more we read about him, we get excited. We have with us as a guest Jim Collins, who is a United States Air Force vet, a retired veteran service officer for the town of Dartmouth. That's when I met Jim. He's also a member of the VFW Post 9059 and on the Veterans Advisory Board for Dartmouth and an American Legion Post 307. A very active man in Veterans Affairs for the town of Dartmouth. On my left here is Frank Allen, the U.S. Army vet, United States Military Academy graduate, fought in the Korean War, a platoon leader, a company commander of Company D in the 23rd Infantry Regiment, the 2nd U.S. Infantry Division. He's also a member of the Dartmouth Veterans Advisory Board and a member of the VFW. My name is Joe Barbero. I'm a veteran of the United States Army, served in the European theater, in the occupation troops, and then recalled for duty in Korea in 1950. I'm a member of the local VFW. I served in the 7th Infantry Division in Dartmouth, in Korea, in the 57th Field Artillery Division. So, we're here today to discuss a man who is a Medal of Honor winner, and there aren't many from Dartmouth for sure. I think the only 2 statues we have up is someone from the Civil War and also Colonel Millett. He graduated in 1940 from Dartmouth High School, and even then he was a kind of a gung-ho guy. Jim, you read about him.
I read many stories about him. I also remember meeting him a couple of times. We had him here to honor him for a weekend when we dedicated the memorial to him in front of the now Dartmouth Middle School. And he was a very, very interesting man. He was a true patriot. That's one of the things I remember most. He came from humble beginnings, went in the service at an early age. I don't think we've talked about that, but I believe he went in when he was about 16, I'm not sure. But the thing I remember most about him was his commitment to the country itself, our Constitution, our way of life, and the freedoms that we enjoy that we all fought for. He was quite a guy, I know that.
He did show that patriotism at an early age. There's a story about when he appeared, he had to speak on Memorial Day, and he joined the National Guard and spoke at the high school in his National Guard outfit. I guess it's an example of how he started, but if you read back in his history, his family was really dedicated to serving their country, right?
Yeah, he goes way back to the beginning of the country, the Revolutionary War. He had relatives from near in every war that we've ever fought in since then.
And he certainly did them proud by
yes,
his
he did.
service.
Yes.
But he certainly once he committed, he certainly proved he was remarkable as a soldier and as a leader. There's lots to say about him. He fought in Italy. He made the invasion in Italy, in Anzio. He fought all the way, I think, to Rome, and just a remarkable soldier. That's all I can say right now.
I returned to the American Army in Britain after the attack on Pearl Harbor. I became a lowly ammo bearer, and we embarked for North Africa in October. So I fought on the beach in North Africa near a port they called Oran. I've seen the vaunted Africa Corps hurl their tanks across the sands. I've ran through heavy artillery fire with shells bursting all around. I drove a burning ammo track through the barrage towards safer, higher ground. I've seen the German Stuks screaming down through the low and leaden skies, diving down, dropping bombs, machine guns strafing, taking young men's lives. We fought in the mud and heat and dust, and in places I can't remember. We bottled the Africa Corps up at Bizerte and forced the Germans to surrender.
Yeah, and when he fought in North Africa, he received, I think, the first of a few silver stars.
Oh, okay, right, yes he did.
Remember the ammo truck that was on fire, and he drove it out, and, you know, it was very dangerous, and he drove an ammo truck. Didn't get killed doing it, and he received the Silver Star for that. Then there was from there, and that was big battles in the desert with General Rommel. Then
Kasserine Pass, all those,
right, all those battles. Yes.
And the event that he received the Medal of Honor for was in Korea. And, it was considered as the last modern day, at that time, bayonet charge against an enemy. And they charged up a hill, and a lot of injuries. He was wounded, I believe, in that fight too.
Oh, yeah.
And for that, he did receive the Medal of Honor.
That was what this program's about. That's what he did receive. He, after World War II, he came back, and it was like a change in his life. And that was the only 3 years, I think, that he was out of the Army for a long time. And he went to Bates College. I guess the GI Bill was in effect. And that's when he went to the Bates College. And I think that's something about the man. Here he was, this warrior, and yet he went to a liberal arts school and he learned poetry and English. And he certainly was, you know, a man that anyone could appreciate. I think it was wonderful. In North Africa, I guess he was wounded once. And when they were sent to Italy, Anzio was a battle. You had some recollections of Anzio because...
my father made the invasion of Anzio and went all the way to Rome. So everything that happened in Italy is lore in my own family.
I fought in the mountains of Italy in the rain and snow and slime, watching men turn pasty white and the sun never seemed to shine. We were breaking out of the Anzio beachhead when our tank hit some German mines. We ducked anti-tank machine gun and rifle fire and ran until we got back to our lines. They gave us a new tank, replaced some of the men, so we drove on to take Rome. The 88, sniper, and machine gun fire made us long and dream of home. We fought at Salerno, Cassino, the Apennines, and the cities of Rome and Venafro. We defeated the Germans in Italy by driving him from the valley of the Po. Our army and our allies conquered Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and Rome. We left them to rule themselves and flew off to the only country we wanted, home.
But I also want to mention more about him in Korea, because that's where he won the medal, earned the medal, and it's called the Forgotten War. But for those like Colonel Millett, it was cold, miserable. Troops were often not well trained, and there were hordes of Koreans first and then Chinese. And I think he's one of the outstanding soldiers we had in that era.
That's true. That's true. But I keep reverting back, I hope I won't confuse people, but back in a local story, back in Italy, when he was in Italy, he was advancing once and with his outfit, and these Germans were attacking this house where there were a lot of people, a lot of American soldiers, and some of them got in there and threw grenades and blew the place up and started a fire. He was fighting to save them. He said one person only jumped out of a window and they were saved. But that was also the fire in which a local soldier was killed. His name is Gil Martha. You have seen the Martha Memorial up on the corner of,
It's near Gulf Road and Bakerville Road.
Gulf and Bakerville, that's where it is. And this Gil Martha's brother, John Martha, was very prominent in the town. That was his brother, Gil Martha, and he was a classmate of Colonel Millett. He was a friend. So there was a lot of tie-ins that came in during that.
There were several
his
classmates that some belonged to our VFW post, but most of them, the World War II generation, are all passing on. So
yes,
they're pretty much all gone now. John Martha also was a World War II vet.
And all these people it's funny how intertwined. You go a continent away and someone from your town is in the house.
Sure.
But it did happen. No, in the Korean War, he was recalled for that. He was out of the service. He was at Bates College, and the war started, and he had probably stayed in the reserve, and he was called back in, and he went to Korea in 1950. And I guess you said he was in the outfit right next to where you were serving over there?
No,
but
but
his company?
Well, he was in the 25th Division. I think the 7th Infantry is part of the 25th Division. And my unit was in the Central Korea. I think he was more toward the west. But I just don't recall.
Yeah.
But I think, like all of us, he probably was in the Battle of Pork Chop Hill. But maybe he'd gone from Korea by
I think they had sent him back because they didn't want the Medal of Honor when it killed him.
That's right.
Yes, he came back in 1951 is when he came back.
Yeah.
But at that point in time, he was with Easy Company of the 27th Infantry Division. They were known as the Wolfhounds, and he had a friend, the captain also that was the Easy Company commander prior to him. Captain Reginald Desiderio, I believe. And
right.
for the battles in that time, that was kind of early in the war. He was also a Medal of Honor recipient, and he lost his life here. Colonel Millett survived.
And he was in the same outfit.
Yes,
he
the same outfit. He preceded
when he
Colonel
left,
Millett. Yes.
That's when they made Colonel Millett the company
Company
commander.
commander. Yes, after that. Yes.
Because and this
They were friends
Desiderio
also.
was his hero.
Right,
He
at
said
the
that
time,
was the
yes.
man that he thought was his hero, and he had fought some real battles up there with
Oh
the
yes, I
tanks,
guess
everything.
so. That was the beginning of the war.
That was the
really.
beginning, and this Desiderio always was in his comments and thoughts. I know that.
I fought in the land called Korea in the heat and freezing cold. I've buried the bodies of friends who will never grow old. I flew as an aerial observer while recovering from wounds of a shell fragment. We flew artillery spotter missions and recon for Chinese enemy movement. AP-51 went down behind enemy lines where we were on a recon mission. Old Jim side-slipped the Piper Cub down to save a doomed pilot from perdition. I gave him my seat so he could fly out and fought a patrol bent on my capture. Old Jim returned and we took off. You could say my thoughts verged on rapture. I joined a famous regiment of Philippine insurrection, Siberian and Guadalcanal fame. It never failed to take an objective, nor failed to hold the same. It fought in 5 wars in the Far East. The Wolfhounds is its name. Once you became a member of the Wolfhound Regiment, you would never be the same. We trained when in reserve by running up mountains, up and down full tilt. We stuck our bayonets in stalks of corn and bundles of rice up to the very hilt. We trained and practiced bayonet assaults in this, our most peculiar way. We knew if we ever fixed bayonets and charged, it would really make our day. Now if you go charging up an enemy-held hill by yourself, all alone, you'll soon find someone digging a hole, a grave that will be your new home. But if you have trained and led your men and shown in combat what you can do, they'll follow you to hell and back, fight against all odds just to honor you. Never as a leader ask a man to do what you refuse or have failed to do. If you follow this maxim, those who fail to follow will be very, very few. So the Army called me a hero and gave me a medal in the capital they called D.C. But the only heroes I ever knew were those who died so we'd be free. One hero I knew was the man who preceded me in command of Easy Company. Desiderio was a California guardsman who believed in duty and liberty. Easy Company defended a hill guarding the task force headquarters position. Other regiments, even divisions, were smashed by the overpowering Chinese offensive. But Desiderio's Easy stopped the Chinese cold and sent them back on the defensive. Dusty received the Medal of Honor for heroically defending a vital, critical position.
I'd like to also add on that, what not only was Colonel Millett a brave and valiant soldier and leader, he also, after all of his service was over, he often spoke at gatherings of civilians and veterans and soldiers as a, not from an ego point of view, but just from the fact that it's good for us to see soldiers like him and hear what they have to say, and Colonel Millett was very good at that.
I was talking to a classmate of his, Ruby Goldstein, who really activated this program, and Ruby said that he was when he was in school, he was on the debating team. And he said that really sharpened his skills, because as a debater on the high school team, you have to really know, you learn to speak well. And he said that, so he had all his skills, one of his skills sharpened right here at Dartmouth High School and with his classmates. But apparently he was a very good debater, and
also he was a credit to the town of Dartmouth. I mean, because wherever he went, wherever he spoke, he mentioned our town.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to his credit.
Yeah, I guess when he received his pictures, seeing when he received the Medal of Honor, when he went back to Washington, and he received the Medal of Honor from President Truman, which was an outstanding honor. But I guess it also led him to meet a woman there. Someone he met, and even though it seemed at the time they were unlikely, because here he was, this fighting guy that's running up a hill with a bayonet charge with a lady in Washington, D.C., and but they were married, got married, and what, 37 years?
37 years they spent together.
And they had 4 wonderful children.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't think it would work out in the beginning, but fortunately for both it did.
Hi, my name is Roy Oliver. I'm the Veteran Service Officer for the town of Dartmouth and a 23-year Air Force veteran. For his actions in the Korean War, Colonel Lewis Lee Millett received the Medal of Honor from the President of the United States, Harry S. Truman, in July 1951 for his service set forth. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty while serving with Company E, 27th Infantry Regiment, in action against enemy aggressive forces at Hill 180, Somni, Korea on 7 February 1951, while personally leading his company in an attack against a strongly held position. Captain Millett noted that the 1st platoon was pinned down by small arms, automatic, and anti-tank fire. Captain Millett ordered the 3rd platoon forward, placed himself at the head of 2 platoons, and with fixed bayonet led the assault up the fire-swept hill. In fierce charge, Captain Millett bayoneted 2 enemy soldiers and boldly continued on, throwing grenades, clubbing, and bayoneting the enemy, while urging his men forward by shouting encouragement. Despite vicious opposing fire, the whirlwind hand-to-hand assault carried to the crest of the hill. His dauntless leadership and personal courage so inspired his men that they stormed into the hostile position and used their bayonets with such lethal effect that the enemy fled in wild disorder. During this fierce onslaught, Captain Millett was wounded by grenade fragments but refused evacuation until the objective was taken and firmly secured. The superb leadership, conspicuous courage, and consummate devotion to duty demonstrated by Captain Millett were directly responsible for the successful accomplishment of a hazardous mission and reflect the highest credit on himself and heroic traditions of the military service.
Our Army went to Korea to fight and help a nation stop a conqueror. To remain free, we wanted no land or territory or conquest, just Korean liberty. In peacetime, they trained me to jump out of airplanes, a supposedly dangerous endeavor. But hell, if you're an infantryman, you don't expect to live forever.
One of the things that that really seemed to impact his life in his later years was the death of his son.
Yes.
His son was serving in the service, and they had been in the Sinai Peninsula, I guess, and they were done what they had to do over there, and they were flying home, and the plane crashed in Newfoundland, and over 200 people were killed, and it was a sad affair. And I think it was not only sad, it greatly impacted his life. He seemed to be like a turning point.
Yeah, they never determined the cause of the crash, I don't believe, too. So
that's what they
it
said.
could have been the beginning of terrorism, for all we know.
Could have been, yeah. But he
flew up in midair.
I know that it really impacted his thinking and everything, but it didn't stop him a bit from going to these conventions you mentioned.
Well, I spent considerable time with him one time when he was here, and we discussed what we did in life, how our lives sort of paralleled each other in one way. But we did have the same type of job. I was the Veteran Service Officer for Dartmouth, and he became the Veteran Service Officer for the county in California where he resided, where he lived. So we both did similar type of work for many years, and it was very rewarding to him as to me too. It was a great job.
We got serve a lot of
so much satisfaction from helping veterans and families. Yeah.
That would be, you know, in his retirement.
Yes.
And I think he also became a sheriff.
Yes, he did.
And he ran for Congress, but he didn't make it.
No.
His, not enough veterans went out to vote, I guess. Whatever it was, he didn't make it. But he was certainly would have been a force in Congress. I'll tell you that.
He may have been too outspoken.
Probably was, because you wouldn't hear anything but the truth from his mouth.
Yes.
That's.
Wow. What town was he? Did he live in California? I've forgotten.
I'm not sure of the town.
Was it Southern or Northern California?
I think it was Southern California.
Southern California.
And,
that's okay.
Yeah, and I did have the name of it, and I forgot it.
Sure.
But it, yeah, that's where he passed away. But he certainly led an eventful life when you think about it.
Yes, he did.
He fought in 3 different wars. We didn't mention that he went to Vietnam. And also served as an advisor.
Yes.
And I don't know if did you read about the, one of you read about how he set up a camp at Fort Devon?
Yes, he stayed in after the Korean War. He made the military career he was in and retired as a full colonel. And in the early 60s, he did go to Vietnam as an advisor, I believe, around 1960. And he was one of the first of the military advisors in Vietnam. He served time there. Then when he came back, he was assigned to Fort Devens. At that time, he did set up a training camp similar to what they would encounter in Vietnam. And he ran that for several years and trained a lot of people.
How to fight that war over in Vietnam, which was another unique war like Korea.
Yes. Sure.
It was different. It was in the jungles as opposed to the cold.
I organized the recondos of the 101st and the raiders of the 82nd Airborne. The Vietnam Rangers, the Laos Commandos, you can see I wasn't exactly chairborne. I went to Nam in '60 and rappelled from the chopper of the president. I'm pretty sure, at least in Nam, it was the very first time for this event. So I served in the land called Nam by the men who fought there and died. When we deserted our ally, that saw grown men curse and cry. My agents found a Viet Cong command, so we scrounged a militia company. We led them on a successful raid that defeated the communist enemy.
Hi, I'm Ray Paul Byron, and I'm a senior at Dartmouth High School and plan on attending college next year. I'm here today to read a little bit about Colonel Millett. Colonel Millett no longer served in the military in 1985. However, his son had volunteered for a peacekeeping force in the Sinai. He was killed on active service. Millett said in a poem that he wrote, "There are those who say we must live in peace. For war they have no time. But it was on a mission of peace that killed that fine son of mine." He ended with another poem in honor of the crash that killed 247 soldiers of the 101st Airborne Sinai Task Force and was dedicated to SSGT John Moore and Millett, his son and his comrades on that task force who died in peacetime, serving their country and the cause of peace. A Soldier's Prayer by Colonel Lewis L. Millett. I've fought where others feared to serve. I've gone where many failed to go. I've lost friends in war and strife who value duty more than love of life. I've shared the comradeship of pain. I've searched the lands for men that we've lost. I've sons who've served our land of liberty, who'd fight to see that other stricken lands are free. I've seen the weak forsake humanity. I've heard fakers praise our enemy. I've seen challenged men become ever bolder. I've seen the duty, the honor, the sacrifice of the soldier. Now I understand the meaning of our lives, the loss of comrades not so very long ago. So to you who've answered duty's siren call, may God bless you, my son. May God bless you all.
Back in that Korean War, there was also a case of one time, an example, he was a forward observer. Do you remember that, when he flew the plane?
Yes. I think he was riding in with a pilot in another plane, and the plane went down with the forward observer was in
Right.
it. And he bravely let the, and there was a little Piper Cub plane along with him, and he gave his seat in the Piper Cub to the pilot, so the pilot would be safe. And thankfully, the Piper Cub pilot came back and got him too.
That was quite a, on his part, he
Sure,
just said,
right.
I'll stay and take that man. And
Sure.
He did a lot of unselfish things. He didn't just talk patriotism. He
lived it.
He lived it.
He could
lived
talk
it.
that all day.
Yeah, and he
He's
lived
a true
it.
patriot.
Yeah, and I know when he came back to the middle school that time and gave a talk.
Yes.
And
That's the time I was referring to when I spent some time.
Oh, at that time, yeah. He was, he certainly gave a good show that day, and that's when people had a chance to, and he talked to everybody. And
Sure.
He was very proud that they had put that monument
I met
outside.
him also at one of the times when he came back to that party at one of the clubs here, a very nice party, and I met him then also.
We talked about his going to school, and he did go to school for 3 years at Bates. He didn't graduate, but then in between, he got out and he went back to a college in Missouri and received his bachelor's degree. And then he came back to Emerson College in Boston and got his doctorate degree of humane letters. Wow. And I think that, to me, that's the most amazing thing about him, the way he stretched from being a guy running up the hill saying, "Follow me," and to a guy who could sit down and recite poetry and talk about anything to a veterans group. He certainly was a man that I respect, and I think anybody that knows about his life will also respect him.
I think we don't have many Medal of Honor winners alive today. I think it is important that, though Colonel Millett is no longer alive, it is important for us to remember them and to honor the things they did. It's remarkable what they did.
There was not. There was only the local man that received it at the same time as him. I believe it was at the same time as him. Well, anyhow, he received it. It was Tom Hudner from Westport. He also received the Medal of Honor. He's a pilot who did some of the same things that Colonel Millett did.
Sure.
And it was. You just don't get the Medal of Honor for anything, and I think that's why we're here today, to honor him and his accomplishments. He certainly was deserving of everything that he received in life, and I'm glad he led a fruitful life like
He
did.
told me one time when we were discussing things, he said, you know, Jim, the true heroes of the war are the ones who don't return,
Right.
that are killed, that stay there.
Yeah. He mentioned
That was his outlook on it.
And that was a key point of his life, his humbleness. Ruby Goldstein, as I said, was a friend of his, and he tells me the story of how right after he received the Medal of Honor, he came to visit Ruby at his home. Ruby had just been married a short time, and he went to visit him to say hello. He was a good friend. And he said he spent the whole afternoon there, or a few hours there, something of that sort, and never mentioned the fact that he'd received the Medal of Honor. He had to hear about it later because he was kind of a humble guy.
That's
He wasn't,
nice.
hey, guess what I got?
That's
on my-"
unusual. That's nice.
Yeah, and you know, you hear so many stories of him like that. He was just what he was. I guess it's about the easiest way of putting it.
Exactly. It was like he said, here I am.
Sitting
take
here
me
talking
for
to
what I
us,
am.
he'd be saying the same thing.
I also think, I think he won the Bronze Star, of course the Purple Heart, the Bronze Star, the Silver Star, the DSC, and the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Yeah,
that's a full deck.
Yeah, that's it. He went from everything, from
Sure.
the local and the unit honors and everything else.
Sure.
He went to, as you say, the bronze, the silver,
Sure,
the Distinguished Service Medal, and that's a fantastic accomplishment.
I've traversed this country and overseas and seen the young man in our service. They're fine young men, trained and dedicated. You don't ever have to feel a bit nervous. For the men of our Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, who today serve our country, deserve our support and gratitude, and most of all, heaven's most generous bounty. So I sing this psalm of a soldier, a song of freedom, for we're soldiers of liberty, and have fought in all this country's wars to ensure that we live free. For if we sing this song of freedom, then all mankind should be free.
A true warrior. I guess one fellow put it best. He said, if you see the word warrior in the dictionary, his picture should be next to it, and that's for sure. That's for sure.
And also,
yeah.
just to add one more thing, because this is something I remember, how cold it was in Korea. He was doing all this, and he was in February when he won his Medal of Honor. And February, it was often, it didn't come to 0 degrees in February in Korea, and I was in Korea, so I know how cold it was. And so he did all this, and he was in the most adverse weather you can be around.
Absolutely. It's one thing I've talked to Korean veterans and some of the people who were at the Chosin Reservoir places, in addition, but the winter of '50, even today, it's another century, says that the winter of '50 was the coldest winter of the century.
I believe it.
And that's when he was running up that hill.
Sure.
Maybe he was just keeping warm. I don't know. I mean, he was a
No
real
hand warmers.
Yeah, it was and I talked to these people, and the one thing they'll say when it's all over and done with, they keep reiterating
How
cold it was over
Sure.
there. It just wasn't even conditions to live in, never mind fight a war. Well, okay, well, you know, I want to thank you people for being here and trying to give your reflections of a pretty great man.
Sure.
And I think we'll close. He wrote, as I say, he wrote many pairs, and Jim is going to read one of the last things that he wrote, and it was a summary, a little capsulization.
Yes, I think he wrote this in 1988 after his son had died, and it was in connection with this other poetry. And as it reads, he says, it was an old soldier's prayer. I have fought when others feared to serve. I have gone where others failed to go. I've lost friends in war and strife who valued duty more than love of life. I have shared the comradeship of pain. I have searched the lands for men that we have lost. I have sons who serve this land of liberty, who'd fight to see that other stricken lands are free. I have seen the weak forsake humanity. I have heard the traitors praise our enemy. I've seen challenged men become even bolder. I've seen duty, honor, sacrifice of the soldier. Now I understand the meaning of our lives. the loss of comrades not so very long ago. So to you who've answered duty's siren call, may God bless you, my son. May God bless you all.
The Soldier's Creed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He who refuses to fight for freedom or serve the cause of liberty will die a coward or live as a slave. I think that was it. He wanted to fight for this country or for any country to keep him free. I don't think it mattered much whether it was Korea or Vietnam,
No, whatever it
United
was,
States,
yeah.
whatever the cause for freedom was, I think he was there. Well, I want to thank you for sharing your thoughts today.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
And
Thank you. Thank you for asking.
And I do know that all we're here for is the same thing, and that's to honor this great man.
Right, Colonel Millett.
Colonel Lewis Millett's speech on Hill 180 Remembrance Day. February 6, 1998, America. The last free society founded in liberty under God still exists, a thread of hope in the fabric of a world replete with tyranny towards man and treason towards God. We are still free because men of honor and courage deeply believe that the defense of liberty is a noble cause.
Jeff Letourneau of Boy Scout Troop 13 will read the obituary of Colonel Millett that was printed in the Idlewild Town Crier of California. Jeff was not born when Colonel Millett led the bayonet charge in Korea. Jeff is representing the generation that will take the place of people like Colonel Millett. There were obituaries of Colonel Millett in papers and magazines all over the nation, and we are proud of his association with Dartmouth.
Medal of Honor recipient Lewis Millett dies at age 88. Idlewild resident and Medal of Honor recipient Colonel Lewis L. Millett died Saturday, November 14th at Jerry L. Pettis Memorial VA Medical Center in Loma Linda after a brief hospitalization. He was a month shy of his 89th birthday on December 15th. A cause of death was not announced, although Colonel Millett had suffered various health problems and had been hospitalized 5 times over the past decade, according to one of his surviving sons, Lewis Lee Millett Jr. of Idlewild. Lee said the funeral will be held at 10 a.m. Saturday, December 5th at the Medal of Honor Memorial in Riverside National Cemetery. Lee said that Congresswoman Mary Bono Mack is expected to attend the funeral. Also expected is retired Navy Lieutenant John Finn, who is at age 100 and is the oldest living Medal of Honor recipient for his actions during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. In 1951, President Harry Truman bestowed the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest level of valor, on Colonel Millett for his heroic action during the Korean War. At that time, Millett was a captain in the U.S. Army. All told, Colonel Millett's military career spanned more than 3 decades and 3 wars: World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, during which he also received Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star, 2 Legions of Merit, 3 Bronze Stars, 4 Purple Hearts, 3 Air Medals, the Army Commendation Medal, and many foreign awards. Nearby, where his father will be laid to rest in the Riverside National Cemetery, stands the POW MIA Memorial, sculpted by his son, Lee, a Vietnam veteran. The sculpture is a prisoner of war bound and kneeling with face turned up to the heavens in supplication. Colonel Millett is also survived by an Idlewild resident, Tim Millett, and a daughter, Elizabeth. He was predeceased by his youngest son, Sergeant John Morton Millett, who died in 1985 while serving as an Army medic with the 187th Infantry Regiment. The colonel's wife, Winona, died in 1993.
Colonel Millett served in 3 wars and continued to serve his fellow man throughout his life. Not only was he a military man, he was also a poet, public speaker, and scholar. He received many honors throughout his life. When Osan Air Force Base was constructed, it was built around the legendary Korean War battle site. Today, the 51st Fighter Wing has its headquarters near the site. The street in front of the monument is named in Louis Millett's honor. During World War II, he received the Silver Star and Bronze Star, Purple Heart, and a battlefield promotion to corporal, sergeant, then a battlefield commission to second and first lieutenant. While serving in the Korean War, he was awarded the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Bronze Stars, and 3 Purple Hearts. He was promoted to captain after 4 months in combat. Colonel Millett was a military instructor. He founded the 101st Airborne's Recondo School, the 82nd Airborne's Raiders, the Rangers of Vietnam, the Commandos of Laos, and was an instructor in the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College. He graduated from the U.S. Army's Infantry, Ranger, and 11th Airborne Schools. Also, the Command and General Staff College and the Army War College. In his civilian life, he received an A.B. degree in political science from Park College, Missouri, and a Doctor of Humane Letters from Emerson College, Boston. He served as an advisor to the governments and/or armies of Japan, Greece, Vietnam, Laos, and Thailand. In combat, he served as an anti-aircraft machine gunner, a tank commander, artillery gunner, a forward observer, an infantry soldier, and an intelligence officer. He was also a paratrooper who made 5 jumps in Laos and 11 in Vietnam. Colonel Millett was the first man to rappel from a helicopter in Vietnam and the last man to lead a company in a bayonet attack. He was a volunteer fireman, a deputy sheriff in Tennessee, a justice of the peace in Texas, and a candidate for the U.S. Congress. In 1968, he received the George Washington Honor Medal from the Freedom Foundation at Valley Forge. Other medals included 2 Legion of Merits, 2 Air Medals, the French Croix de Guerre with Palm, the Canadian War Cross Volunteer Service Medal, Vietnam Cross of Gallantry, and other U.S. and foreign decorations and awards. He was mentioned in dispatches by the South African Air Force for helping to rescue a downed pilot behind enemy lines in North Korea. His last assignment in Vietnam was advisor to the Fung Hang, also known as the Phoenix Intelligence Program. He was a past National Commander of the Legion of Valor, a former District Director of the Medal of Honor Society, and has served as the Honorary Colonel for the 27th Infantry Regiment, the Wolfhounds, since 1985. He was married to Winona Williams of Abilene, Texas, whom he met at the White House Medal of Honor reception. They had 4 children, Louis Jr., Timothy, Elizabeth, and John. The youngest son, Staff Sergeant John Morton Millett, was killed on December 12, 1985, while serving with Task Force 502 Multinational Peacekeeping Force in the Sinai.